Hey bookworms, it's Jade from Bedtime Bookworm, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here to tell you about a bunch of series that I want to start reading in 2020. That's right, you heard me right. I have a list of series that I want to start next year. If you are new around here, you might not know that I am in the middle of a lot of series, and for the past couple of years, it's been a goal of mine to shrink that number down so that I'm not in the middle of so many series. And as part of that goal, I've been avoiding starting new series. I've been thinking and reflecting on my series goals a lot over this past month since we're coming to the end of the year. And I'll definitely talk more about it in my goals video that will be coming out in the new year. But basically, I'm going to be reframing how I think about my series a little bit. Basically, I felt a little restricted in starting series because I have a long list of series that I'm very interested in reading, but I've been holding off on starting them because I always felt like I was in the middle of too many series at once. And so I wanted to wait until I felt like I had a better handle on the number of series that I'm reading. But the problem is that I'm still starting new series. They're just not the series that are at the top of my TBR. So the idea behind this video is to make a list of series that I'm really excited about reading, that I've been putting off for a while for most of them. So when I do start new series, hopefully I'm pulling them from this list and not just starting random series. Realistically, will I be starting series that are not on this list? Yes. And realistically, will I be starting all 15 of these series? No, but hopefully this list will help me stay focused on the series that I am most interested in reading. So that's what today's video is. It's a list of 15 series that I am dying to start reading, and hopefully I start them in 2020. Oh, the other thing is that the series on these lists are all series that are completely published. If you know me, you know that's something that I like, is being able to read a series in its entirety. And I didn't include duologies or companion series. I just feel like duologies and companion series are not that big of a commitment, so I didn't include any of those on this list because there are definitely duologies and companion series that I am super excited about reading, and I may or may not start them next year. Anyways, that was a bit of a long intro, but let's get on into it. I've got 15 series, like I said. I tried really hard to make this a 10 series list, but I'm just so damn excited about all of these series that I couldn't narrow it down anymore. It was actually a longer list, and I narrowed it down to 15. But I couldn't cut out another 5. I have 7 adult series and 6 YA series and 2 middle grade series because I've been saying for over a year now that I like middle grade and I wish I read it more, but I never do. So I'm putting these 2 middle grade series on my list in the hopes that I will actually read them next year, or at least start them. Okay, let's start with the middle grade series because there's only 2 of them. The first middle grade series on my list is Fable Haven by Brandon Mull. This is a high fantasy series, or I think it might be a portal fantasy series. I first heard about it from Connor O'Brien. I will link his channel down below. And the way that he has described the series has just made it sound so interesting. I can't even explain really what the series is about because I don't remember the details. There are lots of different creatures or different species that he made sound really cool. And I do own a couple of these, not the first book. I think it's like the second and the fourth or something. I own a couple of these that I picked up at a library book sale. I've been wanting to read the series for over a year and I've just been putting it off. So hopefully in 2020 I will at least start it. And this is a 5-book series. The other middle grade series that I put on my list is called the Ascendance Trilogy by Jennifer A. Nielsen. This is a trilogy, as the name implies. The first book in the trilogy is called The False Prince. I have heard about this series from multiple people on BookTube, and it just sounds really good. It's a middle grade high fantasy, and it sounds like there's some political intrigue. In the first book, there is a competition. They're trying to find a boy to impersonate the king's long-lost son, and there's a competition to win this role, and the main character is one of the orphans that is in this competition, and if he doesn't win to become the false prince, then he's probably gonna die. This series sounds like it has a lot of tropes that I really like, and I've also heard that it's really good on audiobook, so I'm hoping to listen to it. Okay, moving on to my YA series. I have 6 YA series that I am just dying to read. A lot of these are really old series, so you'll see that I have been really holding off on starting them for a while now. The first YA series on my list, and these aren't in any sort of order, but the first one on my list is the Winner's Trilogy by Marie Rudkowski, the first book being The Winner's Curse. This is a YA high fantasy, and the series was very buzzy back in the day. I've heard that the main character is like one of those really smart characters that is like cunning, and there's a lot of political intrigue and like royalty things. At least that's the vibe I'm getting from the original covers. I have heard so much about this series. It's been on my TBR forever, and it is time for me to read it. The next series on my list is a science fiction series, and that's the Firebird series by Claudia Gray. The first book in the series is called 1,000 Pieces of You. All I really know about it is that there are alternate universes or time travel, maybe both, but those are both tropes that I like or buzzwords of mine. I've heard a lot of buzz about the author Claudia Gray in general. She has some Star Wars books that I've heard a lot about and I'm interested in reading, but I really wanted to start with her Firebird trilogy just because the type of story it is sounds right up my alley. The next series on my list is even older than the last two. It's another YA high fantasy, and it's the Fire and Thorns series by Ray Carson. This is a 3-book series, although I just looked it up on Goodreads and it looks like there is a 4th book coming out next year. So maybe it's not a finished series, but also that trilogy has stood on its own for 7 years now. So I'm thinking that this either might be like a new arc, like a new storyline, or I don't know. According to the book description, this 4th installment in the series is going to be a standalone. So yeah, I'm considering it to be a completed trilogy. I have read and loved Ray Carson's other series, the Gold Seer trilogy, which is like a historical fantasy set during the gold rush. Love that series, loved every single book in that trilogy, and I have been wanting to read more Ray Carson ever since I read those books. And this is an older series of hers, which makes me a little bit nervous. I don't love going backwards in an author's backlist because, you know, they get better as they write more. But I've heard a lot of good things about this series. All I really know about it is that there is a girl who is born with a like jewel in her belly button, and that means something, but I don't know what. I'm very intrigued. I have snagged a copy of this first book. I believe I got it at BookNet Fest in someone's unhaul, but I am really excited about reading the series because I loved Ray Carson's other trilogy so much. And now I'm really excited to know that she's coming out with another book set in this world because I didn't know that before. The next series on my list is another YA fantasy, and that is the Remnant Chronicles by Mary A. Pearson. This is a trilogy, and the first book is called The Kiss of Deception. This is another series that has been around for a little while. The first book came out in 2014, but I remember hearing such good things about it every time a new book in the series was released, and I believe that people even liked the way that the series ended. What I know about this is that the main character in the first book is a princess, and she is supposed to marry somebody, but she doesn't want to, so she runs away and becomes like a tavern maid or something. And there's also somebody who has been sent to assassinate her, I think. And basically the assassin and the prince show up at where she ran away to, and we don't know as the reader which male character is which. So it does sound like there's a love triangle there, but I really love the setup of that story, and I love the fact that we're not going to know which one is the assassin and which one's the prince. And I am really excited about getting to the series. I have been dying to read it for a couple years now. Okay, the next 2 YA series are not as old as the ones that I was just talking about. They both had their concluding books come out just this year. So first, I'm going to talk about another sci-fi book, and that is the Arc of the Scythe series by Neil Shusterman. This is a trilogy, with the first book being Scythe. This is a YA sci-fi dystopian series, and I love dystopian. I haven't been reading a lot of it lately, I feel like, but Hunger Games was my jam back in the day, and I know that a lot of people have kind of gotten over dystopians. Maybe I just haven't read enough of them yet in my lifetime, but I still love dystopians, and I have been hearing such good things about the series. It's been so buzzy from the very beginning when the first book came out, and now that the last book has come out, people are still talking about it and saying that it's a fantastic series, which is always exciting because you never know when a series is going to go downhill. This is set in a futuristic world where basically humans don't have any problems anymore. We've cured all sickness, nobody dies. Because of that, there needs to be some sort of population control. So there are these people, at least I think they're people, who are called scythes, and their job is to select people to kill to keep the population from growing too much. And I think there's also an AI involved called Thunderhead, and that's also the name of the second book in the series. I don't know what this AI does, but I love stories about AIs, and so I'm very interested by that as well. This is a series I've had my eye on for a little while, and now that it's a completed series, I am ready to read it ASAP. The next and last YA series on my list is The Shattered Realms by Cinda Williams-Chima. This series is a sequel series to the Seven Realms series, which I have previously read and absolutely love. Like, it is one of my favorite YA fantasy series ever, and so I've definitely been eyeing this series for a while. It's a 4-book series. The first book is called Flamecaster, and the 4th book in the series just released earlier this year. This series is about the children, I believe, of the main characters from the Seven Realms series, so you definitely can't read it without having first read the Seven Realms series. I've heard the series is really good, and I cannot wait to get back into this world. I'm a little nervous because I've heard that the way that the series starts, like the things that have happened to the main characters from the previous series that like happened to them in between the two series, that it's like, I don't know, devastating or like not good. But I don't care. I still want to read it. I want to know what happens. And I already know that I love Cinda Williams' writing and world building and all of that. So I'm really excited to get into this series next year. Okay, moving on to my adult series. I have 7 adult series that I am dying to read. The first series I'm going to talk about is another series that just finished up this year, and that is the Book of the Ancestor series by Mark Lawrence. This is a trilogy, with the first book being Red Sister. And this series has been so buzzy. I have heard so many good things about it. I feel like it's a lot of people's favorite. It is a high fantasy series, and what I know about it is that it's about assassin nuns, and I think there's a school setting, so nuns in an assassin school. On top of that, I recently tweeted out asking for people to recommend me fantasy stories that have the chosen one trope and prophecies, because I love those two tropes together. It's one of the things that I love about the Wheel of Time, and I've just found over and over again that I love stories that involve a chosen one with a prophecy, and then like seeing how the prophecy becomes fulfilled. And this was one of the series people recommended, saying that it fit that criteria, which I did not know before I tweeted that out. So that made me even more excited about reading the series. Next, I have another fantasy series. This one's a little bit older, and that is the Broken Earth series by N.K. Jemisin. This is a trilogy, and the first book is the 5th season, and I have heard so much about this series. It's set in a world where there are big, like, catastrophes that happen, like continents moving, I think, and this happens like cyclically, and I think there's magic involved. Obviously, I don't know a whole lot about it because I like to go into things semi-blind, but I know that a lot of people love this trilogy. Every single book, all 3 of them, won the Hugo Award, and I've just heard such good things about N.K. Jemisin and this series. My cousin Shannon, who has a booktube channel called That's So Poe, I'll link her in the description box, she read this whole trilogy, I don't know, in like a week, something crazy, like really quickly, because she loved it so much, and I have been dying to read this series for over a year, but I haven't been letting myself because I've been so concerned about the number of series that I'm reading. But I'm going to let that go, and next year I'm going to start some of these series that I have just been dying to read. The next series on my list is a science fiction series, and some of you might be surprised that I haven't read this because it is a little on the older side, and that is Red Rising by Pierce Brown. This has been described as like Hunger Games in space. I know that there's like a caste system involving colors, like Red is one of the casts. I have so many friends that love this series, and I've just been putting off reading it for a really long time. But I like science fiction, I like dystopian, I like Hunger Games. I want to read this series. When I start this, I'm probably just going to be reading the original trilogy. I mean, if I like it, but I won't be reading the second series that has started until that's completed, most likely. The next series on my list is another high fantasy, and that is the Faithful and the Fallen series by John Gwynne. I feel like this is a series I've only more recently heard about, but it's an older series. The first book, called Malice, came out in 2012. It's a 4-book series, and the last book in the series came out in 2016. So it's been completed for a little while, and I've just been hearing about it from various corners of BookTube. I actually don't know a lot of details on what it's about because, like I said, I like to go into things fairly blind, but I've heard a lot of people say that this is like an underrated fantasy series, and I am dying to see what all the fuss is about. The next series on my list is another high fantasy, and this one won't surprise anybody because I've been talking about it for a few videos now, and that is the Live Ship Traders by Robin Hobb. This is a trilogy, with the first book being Ship of Magic. This is the next series in the realm of the Elderlings. It comes after the Farseer trilogy, which I finished this year. And this series is about, I don't know if they're pirates, but people who, you know, live on big boats and sail for a living. But these ships are special because I think it's because of the type of wood that they're made with, but basically a family, you know, lives and dies on this ship, and once a certain number of descendants in this family have died and given like their blood to the ship, then the ship becomes sentient and comes to life. That's all I know about it, but it sounds fascinating, and I have heard that this series is even better than the Farseer trilogy, and it's what I need to read before I can get back to Fitz and my other babies from the Farseer trilogy. So I'm definitely wanting to start this next year, hopefully even finish it so that I can continue on in the realm of the Elderlings. I was kind of thinking that I would do like one realm of the Elderlings series a year, but I might want to do more than one a year because there's like 5 series, and I don't know if I want to wait like 4 more years to finish the Realm of the Elderlings, so we'll see. Okay, the next series on my list is another high fantasy, and that is the Licanius trilogy by James Islington. Hopefully I'm pronouncing all of that correctly. This is a trilogy, with the first book being The Shadow of What Was Lost. The last book in this trilogy just came out in 2019. I've honestly only heard a handful of people talking about this series. It sounded interesting, but it definitely wasn't super high on my list of series that I wanted to read until I tweeted that tweet I mentioned asking for recommendations of series that have a chosen one trope with a prophecy, and I was told that the series does have those things. And then I was perusing Goodreads, or maybe I was looking at Audible, and the narrator for this series is Michael Kramer, who I love, but also the blurb somewhere mentioned that this would be a good series for fans of The Wheel of Time, and hello, that sounds like me. All of those things just bumped the series way up my series TBR, and now I am dying to read it, and hopefully I will start it next year. Okay, the last series on my list is one that I've had my eye on for a while now, and that is the Newsflesh trilogy by Mira Grant. This is a trilogy, but it looks like there's also a 4th standalone book that timeline-wise overlaps with the trilogy. This is a zombie series, and anytime I've asked for zombie recommendations, because I'm always looking for more zombie books to read, I haven't read a whole lot. I love zombie movies. I've loved the handful of zombie books that I've read. I want to read more, and anytime I ask for recommendations, people always talk about the series. So it's been on my list for a while, I just haven't gotten around to it. The author, Mira Grant, if you don't know, is also Shannon McGuire. She writes horror under the name Mira Grant, and I've read one Mira Grant book. I read Into the Drowning Deep this year during the summer, loved it, and I got very excited about reading more Mira Grant. I'm really hoping that I can get around to starting this series next year. Alright guys, those are 15 series that I am dying to read. For all 15 of these, the thought of not starting them in 2020 breaks my heart. Like, I really want to start reading all of them. I don't know how realistic that is, or how good of an idea that would be considering how many series I'm in the middle of, but I really am excited about all of these series equally, and I am really hoping that I can start them next year. Honestly guys, sometimes I just get sad when I think about all the books that I want to read and how I don't have time to read all of them. If you have read any of these series, let me know what you thought of them down in the comment section, and let me know which ones you are excited about seeing me start. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more bookish content. That is all I have for now. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bookworms, keep reading. Bye. The next series on, okay, so show up where she is the show up where she has but it's the is another adult fantasy. Bye.